Welcome everybody to the second session of our masterclasses. Today we're going to be looking at bread making. We're going to start off, I'm just going to show you the ingredients. So I've got 500 grams of strong white flour there. I've got 7 grams of fast action yeast or dried yeast. You can get that in sachets from the supermarket. I've got some salt, table salt, and I've got some sugar, just normal granulated sugar, and 300 mils of lukewarm water. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the yeast into the bowl on one side. We're going to take 2 teaspoons of the salt and we're going to add that to the other side.
Why is that? Why would you do that, Chef?
We keep the salt and the yeast and the sugar separate for the time being because we don't want them to kill each other. Sometimes they can cancel each other out in the raw state. So I'm going to put the sugar on another side there, and with your hand we're just going to mix it all through the flour firstly, just to distribute it, and then we're going to start adding the water. The water's lukewarm because it'll activate that yeast just a little bit quicker. So we're going to start off.
So what temperature would you say then lukewarm is? Body temperature?
Yeah, body temperature between 29 degrees and 32 is an optimum temperature. Anything higher than 37, you're just going to end up destroying your yeast, really. We're going to use our hands like a claw to work it in, a bit at a time.
And this is a case of don't be frightened, isn't it? Don't put it all in to start with.
No, because you think, oh, that still looks dry, but the more you work it, the more moisture comes out, because it just looks like it's trapped in the flour. And obviously you'll have some on your fingers. You can rub that off your fingers there. This recipe will call for all that water, maybe even a little touch more, just depending.
And does that change each time you make it because of the structure of the flour?
Well, we use
some you have less water, some
do. It depends what you're substituting your water with. In case you're using, I don't know, olive oil or extra milk, additives, that becomes an enriched dough then, eggs, stuff like that. But for your basic white bread, I just stick to using water personally. I'm going to add half of this in, leave a little bit back. Don't be afraid if it sticks to your hands or whatever. That's what you want. It's all about feel with bread and dough products. It's all about the texture, and that's what we're getting to there. It's starting to come together. You've still got some of the dry bits in there, but we're just pushing it all together. Get it off your hands, because that's obviously got moisture on. That's why it's sticking to your hands. I'm going to add this last drop because it still needs it. And what you want to do is you want to work it until it's smooth. It will take a while, it won't just happen automatically, because if you add too much water it's just going to become like a slop, and then you're going to add more flour and then it's going to ruin the structure. We talk a lot about structure with bread, and the structure that we're looking for is a gluten structure. That's why we're using a strong bread flour, because it's got a higher gluten content. This is coming together now.
And what does the gluten do? Does it help with its rising, help with its formation on the inside?
So when we cut into bread and we see the inside of it, obviously I've just tipped it onto the surface there. We're going to start kneading it. Going back to the structure. So when we look inside bread that's been cut, and we're looking for like a nice airy kind of texture, and that's the gluten that's expanded, so it'll expand and the strands will pull apart, and it'll give it that structure. Where if we're using a plain flour or something like that, it hasn't got the gluten in it that we need to form that structure, to allow it to rise. So that's why we're using strong bread flour, as it says in the name really. So we're going to just start working this now. As you can see, it's picked up most of the bits that are on the side. Just pick them up with it. And we're going to start kneading it. So kneading is a process of getting that gluten working and getting the strands and the fibres to start stretching. The feel is something that you should learn really when you're doing bread for the first time. So I'm using the heel of my hand, I'm pushing it out and I'm pulling it back on itself, and I'm turning it. Keep going like that until it becomes smooth and elasticy. So after kneading for 10-15 minutes, the dough's now smooth, it's got a nice smooth side, it's quite stretchy. That's the gluten building up there for you. So what we're going to do is just form that into a little ball, roll it round in your hands like that. We're going to pop it back in the bowl there. We're going to take some cling film, we're going to cover it over, and we're going to leave it for the next stage, which is called the first proof. Leave that somewhere warm in your house, not overly warm or it'll kill it. Give it an hour, it should double in size, and then we're on to the next stage of the shaping. So this is the dough after it's been proved. If you can see the difference in it, it's nice and soft. So what we're going to do now is called knocking it back. We're going to knock the air out of it. So it's almost just a case of kneading it again.
Why did we knock the air out of it, Chef?
We knocked the air out of it because we want to get more structure in it, because that first proof won't have enough structure in the gluten. So by knocking the air out of it and letting that yeast do its thing again and bulk, it just firms that structure.
Okay,
that's what it'll do. So we've knocked that back, we've got most of the air out of it, so it's gone a bit flatter, but it's still quite elastic. Can you see that? The dough is. And it should have like a yeasty smell to it, like almost a beery smell. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this into bread rolls. So I've got a knife to cut the dough and I've got a pair of scales. The importance of the scales is to make sure that all the bread rolls are the same size, or they just won't cook properly. So we're going to try and get 50-gram rolls.
Are we going to weigh it all in one go first and divide it?
I usually take pieces off it and weigh it like that. You can do it like that, because you're going to knead it and work it into a shape anyway. Sorry, we'll do 100-gram rolls. Sorry, because you're going to knead it into the shape. It doesn't really matter about weighing it and dividing it. You can do it that way by all means.
Yeah,
it's not a problem. Now at this stage we do need to be fast, because the dough will start forming a bit of a skin, and that makes it harder to work with because the air's getting to it. So when we've covered it with the cling film, it's adding a little bit of moisture to it. So we're going to just work them together in the palm of your hand. You can just press it all in. Sorry. Press it like that, tucking it and rolling it into the middle almost, and then with that on the surface, unfloured, just roll it in a claw of your hand like that, and that's going to form a seal on the bottom there, and it's going to give you a nice smooth top. We're going to dust the baking paper with a little bit of flour just to stop it sticking when it rises, because there will be excess moisture that comes out of it. And then we're going to place them onto the baking tray like that. I'm going to get the other ones, do exactly the same. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dust a little bit of flour over the top, and we're going to take a damp tea towel. Now we're not going to cling film them, we're going to take a damp cloth, and again we're going to leave them for another hour to prove somewhere warm.
This time we're going to do some flavoured bread, so we're going to add some sun-dried tomato and we're going to add some black olives to it. I'm just going to push this out slightly and knock it back like we did with the first lot of bread. Put some of each in there.
You can put whatever flavours you want in it really, as long as it's not too wet.
Yeah, cheese, herbs.
Cheese, herbs, all different kinds of stuff. Onions, caramelised onions.
Bring that into there.
That's almost like a letterbox fold, isn't it? That's what we do in there,
yeah.
Using it in.
I'm just going to put a little bit more in, not going to go too mad.
Don't be afraid of your dough as well, guys, that's what I'd say to you. Don't be afraid of pushing it and squashing it. It is very pliable.
And it will rip open until the strands start to come back together again.
Yeah, definitely. But don't be afraid of it, because you want to work everything into it.
There's nothing worse than biting into it and you get a big mouthful of black olive and very little bread.
Yeah, definitely. Just if your side gets sticky, just add a little bit more flour, but don't put lots down. You see how Steve's sprinkling it from a height? That just stops it clumping and making the bread too dry. because them sun-dried tomatoes have got oil in them and the olives have got moisture in them, it will make a sticky bread.
So here's our intermediate level of bread making. So sun-dried tomato, black olive. Again, we've made some just simple bread rolls, and this time we've made a little bit of a loaf. So I'm just going to cover that up with a damp cloth to stop it drying up too much, and then we're going to leave it somewhere warm like our other bread, ready to prove before it goes into the oven.
Right guys, we're going to show you the higher level now. We're going to show you how to make some different shapes and a couple of different techniques with the dough. So I'm going to show you to make some knots with your dough. So I've got a strip of it there that I've weighed out, and I'm just rolling it into a sausage shape, almost like a snake. And then we're going to wrap it round, 2 fingers there, through. And that forms almost like a Staffordshire knot there. And then with this other one, I'm going to roll it into a sausage, like a elongated snake shape, and I'm going to just roll it up, almost like a Danish pastry. And when that proves, it's going to balloon up a little bit there. So that's your 3 shapes that I've done there, and then I'm going to turn this one. I'm going to show you how to do some scoring. So we've got the dough there. Just going to do what's called a letterbox fold, so fold it in like that and then fold it over, and that creates a seam there, so that tucks under like that there, and it gives it a bit more structure and a nice smooth outside. And we're gonna take a knife and just score the top and put some nice score marks into it. Flour your tray with your greaseproof on. Place your products on. So we've got that one there. Again, remembering to leave a gap, because when they prove they will double in size. And we're going to take the loaf and we're going to pop that on there as well. Let that double up. Tiny bit of flour over the top.
Cut mine up into 100 gram portions again, and as before we just rolled it into a clean simple ball, and then we've taken a smaller piece of dough and we've done a smaller ball, and we're going to sit it on the top so it almost looks like a little snowman, but it's actually a cottage loaf. So we're going to take that off, lightly flour our parchment paper, another ball of dough, we're just going to roll it out, and then we're going to pat it down gently. And then, can I have that knife please, chef?
Yes, for sure.
Thank you. And I'm just going to lightly trim off and square off the 4 sides, and this is going to be called a pave, little square shape. The last bit where James had a big piece, I've left myself with a biggish piece, 300 grams, and I've just divided it into 3 100 gram strands, and we're just going to roll it out like James did as a sausage, join them together at the top, push it down, and then we're going to plait it.
A very decorative way of doing bread, this is. And then that top fold, once it's been pinched together, just tucks underneath.
Get that onto there, damp cloth over it again, somewhere nice and warm. We're going to let that proof for 45 minutes to an hour.
So here we are then guys, bread after baking. The beginner white rolls there, very nice. The intermediate with the flavourings in, so you've got the black olives and the sun-dried tomatoes, a little bit of salt on top there. Then your larger loaf. Then we move on to the more advanced section where we've got the plaited loaf, the knots, the scoring, and then we've got the little cottage loaf down there. Any questions, anything at all, please feel free to put it in the chat box or drop us an email. It just goes to show how one mix of bread, one dough mix, can make so many different variations. So, hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you.